sun was burning fiercely over the endless desert planet. The sky was a pale orange, filled with dust and heat waves that made the air look like it was moving. The ground was cracked and dry. No plants grew here. No animals were seen. Only silence and heat ruled this harsh land. In the middle of this desert, a small alien village lay hidden behind tall rocks. The people there were thin and worn. Their skin was a dull gray color, and their eyes looked tired and sad. Water was very rare on this planet, and every drop was precious. The village's water came from a small reservoir protected by strong guards. They watched the water carefully, because if it was lost or stolen, many would die. A young alien girl named Lyra moved quietly behind the rocks. Her heart was pounding. Her thin hands trembled as she looked at the reservoir. She was only 15, but life had already been very hard for her. She had lost her family to the harsh desert storms and lived alone in a small hut at the village edge. Hunger and thirst were her constant enemies. Lyra wiped sweat from her forehead. She knew the risk she was taking. If the guards caught her, the punishment would be terrible, but she had no choice. Her small supply of water had run out, and she was weak with thirst. She had to steal water or die. She waited until the guards were busy talking. Then she quickly moved forward, her feet barely making a sound on the cracked ground. Her eyes were fixed on the water tank, a metal container that held just enough water for the village. She pulled out a small container she had brought with her and dipped it carefully into the water. Her heart jumped when she heard a voice shout, "Stop, thief!" The guards had seen her. Two tall, muscular aliens ran towards her, their faces angry and cruel. Lyra froze, her small container in hand. One guard grabbed her arm roughly. "The law," he growled. "Stealing water is the worst crime. You must pay." Lyra looked at the guards with wide, terrified eyes. "Please, I'm thirsty. I need water," she whispered, her voice breaking. The guards did not care. One of them pulled out a sharp blade. "This is your punishment," he said coldly. "You will lose your arm." Lyra gasped and tried to pull away, but the guard's grip was like iron. She closed her eyes and waited for the pain. Suddenly, a loud shout came from behind the guards. "Stop. Leave her alone." The guards turned quickly. A tall human man was standing there, calm and strong. His eyes were bright and full of courage. His clothes were strange but clean, and he held a small device that shone with light. "Who are you?" the guard asked, stepping forward with suspicion. The human took a slow step forward and said firmly, "I am here to protect her. You will not hurt this girl." The guards laughed. "And who will stop us? You are just a stranger. We have our laws." The human smiled but did not show fear. "I do not want to fight, but I will if I must." The air grew tense. The guards looked at each other unsure. The human's calm strength surprised them. Lyra opened her eyes and looked at the human. Hope filled her heart for the first time in many days. The human turned to her and said softly, "Are you okay?" She nodded, still shaking. "Thank you." One guard stepped forward angrily. "This is not your business. Leave now." The human held up his device. Bright blue light shot out and formed a strong shield between the guards and Lyra. "No one will harm her," the human said firmly. The guards growled, but did not attack. They looked at each other and then slowly stepped back. The human turned to Lyra. "Come with me. You are safe now." Lyra hesitated. "But what about my village? What about the water?" The human smiled kindly. "I will help you. But first, we must get away from here." Lyra followed the human quickly. Behind them, the guards watched, angry but powerless. As they walked away from the reservoir, the human spoke gently. "My name is Mark. I come from a far planet Earth. I am here to learn and to help." Lyra looked up at him, surprised. "Earth? I have never heard of it." Mark smiled. "It is a planet of water, forests, and life. Maybe I can bring some of that here." Lyra smiled faintly. For the first time, she felt something she had not known for a long time. Hope. The sun began to set, turning the sky deep red. The desert night was coming, cold and dark. Mark and Lyra found a small cave to rest. She told him stories of her life, the hunger, the thirst, the loss. Mark listened quietly, his heart heavy. "You are brave," he said softly. "I will not let anything happen to you." Lyra looked at him with tears in her eyes. Thank you, Mark. The night was silent except for the sound of wind outside. Two strangers from different worlds sat together, bound by a new friendship. But far away, the alien village's leaders were watching. They did not like this human or his kindness. Trouble was coming, and both Mark and Lyra would have to face it soon. The desert air was heavy and quiet as the sun dipped below the horizon. The sky turned a deep purple, and the cold of the night began to creep in. In the distance, the small alien village lay under the watchful eyes of its leaders. The village was tense, its people whispering rumors of the strange human who had suddenly appeared. The guards who had caught Lyra were uneasy. Their anger burned hot, but they knew the human was not an ordinary stranger. He had shown strength and calm like none of them had seen before. Some even wondered if he was more than just a visitor. Inside a rough stone building, the village leaders gathered. Their faces were sharp and serious. One of them, the elder named Thax, spoke with a voice full of warning. "This human is dangerous," Thax said. "He interfered with our laws. He stopped the punishment. This cannot be ignored." Another leader, a woman named Zara, nodded. "He has power we do not understand. We must be careful. If he stays, he could change everything." Meanwhile, Mark and Lyra moved quickly through rocky paths away from the village. Mark carried the small water container she had stolen. He wanted to see what was inside. Lyra looked at him nervously. "You still want to help me?" Mark smiled softly. "No one should suffer because of water." They reached a small clearing where Mark's ship was hidden behind tall stones. The ship was unlike anything Lyra had seen, shiny and smooth, with lights glowing softly. Mark opened the door, and the cool air inside was a welcome relief from the desert heat. As Lyra stepped inside, she felt a strange mix of fear and wonder. The ship hummed with life, and strange machines moved quietly. Mark showed her a small water purifier and a device that could make water from the desert air. "This will help," Mark said proudly. "I can create water for your people. But we must act carefully. Not everyone will want this." Lyra nodded. "The leaders will not trust you. They think you are a threat." Mark's face grew serious. "Then we must show them we mean no harm." The ship's sensors beeped. Mark looked at the screen and frowned. "They are coming," he said. "The village guards are looking for us." Outside, a group of armed guards marched toward the clearing. Their faces were grim and angry. They wanted to capture the human and bring him back to face punishment. Mark quickly closed the ship's doors and prepared to defend. He activated a small shield around the ship that shimmered with blue light. Lyra watched wide-eyed. "Can they get inside?" Mark shook his head. "Not easily, but they will try." The guards stopped at the edge of the clearing and shouted, "Come out, human! You have broken our laws." Mark opened the ship's door just a crack. "I only want to help," he called out. One guard stepped forward. "Help. You stopped justice. You helped a thief." Mark's voice was calm but strong. "She is not a thief. She is a victim. The water is scarce. Your laws are cruel." The guards laughed bitterly. "Our laws keep us alive. You don't understand." Suddenly one guard fired a stun dart toward the ship's door. The shield flashed, but held firm. Mark moved quickly. Using a small device, he created a bright flash of light that blinded the guards temporarily. "Run," he shouted to Lyra. She hesitated, but the danger was clear. She ran toward a narrow path that led deeper into the rocky desert. Mark covered her with a small energy weapon that fired harmless but loud pulses. The guards were confused but did not dare follow as Lyra disappeared into the darkness. Mark closed the ship's door fully and prepared to leave. But before he could lift off, a deep voice came over a communicator on his wrist. "Mark, this is Commander Harris. We detected hostile forces on the planet. Are you safe?" Mark answered quickly. "I am near the village. They want to capture me. I'm helping an alien girl. We must be careful." The commander's voice was serious. "Stay alert. We are sending backup. You are not alone." Mark felt a surge of hope. Help was coming. But he knew the real challenge was just beginning. Days before, No one on this dry planet had expected a human to arrive and change everything. Back in the village, Lyra ran as fast as she could through narrow paths and jagged rocks. Her heart beat wildly. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she could not go back. Suddenly, she stumbled and fell. Pain shot through her leg. She looked up to see a strange figure approaching, a young alien boy, no older than her, with worried eyes. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. Lyra nodded. "I am running from the guards. A human saved me." The boy's eyes widened. "A human? Here that is dangerous?" Lyra smiled faintly. "I think he wants to help us." The boy helped her up. "My name is Jox. I don't trust the leaders, but they control everything." Lyra felt hope rise again. Maybe she was not alone. Together they moved toward a secret place in the mountains, a hidden cave where rebels gathered. These rebels wanted to change the village's harsh ways and welcomed anyone who fought for freedom. When they reached the cave, Lyra told her story. The rebels listened with shock and excitement. "If a human is here, maybe things will change," said an older rebel woman. "But the leaders will not let this happen easily," Jox warned. Lyra looked out at the desert night, feeling a mix of fear and courage. She had risked everything for a chance at life, and now, with the human and the rebels, she hoped for a new future. Back at the ship, Mark prepared for what was next, reviewed the village's data, and studied the planets. Maps? Water was the key. Without it, the people would suffer and die. He knew he must find a way to help the whole village. Not just Lyra, but the leaders would fight him. Mark took a deep breath. "I will not give up," he said quietly. "For her, for them." World. As the stars shone above the desert, a new journey began, one filled with danger, hope, and the chance to change a dying world. The morning sun rose slowly over the cracked desert land, casting long shadows across the village. The air was dry, filled with dust and the quiet sounds of people waking up. But inside the large stone hall, where the village leaders met, tension hung thick like a heavy fog. Tax, the elder, sat at the head of the rough wooden table, his sharp eyes fixed on the small screen before him. The screen showed images from the outskirts of the village, the place where the human ship had landed, and where the guards had failed to capture him. "The human's presence is a threat to our laws," Thax said with a hard edge. "He defied us by stopping the punishment of the girl. If we let him stay, others will begin to break our rules." Zara, the woman leader, leaned forward, her voice low but fierce. "We cannot fight him openly. He has weapons and strength. We do not understand. But we can use his kindness against him." Thax nodded slowly. "We will offer a deal. Let him save the girl, but he must serve us in return. We need his power." Far away, in the shadowy canyon where the human ship was hidden, Mark and Lyra prepared for a meeting with the leaders. Lyra was nervous. She did not trust the village leaders anymore. They had almost taken her arm for stealing water, yet now they wanted to talk to a human? Mark placed a calming hand on her shoulder. "We need to know what they want. Maybe we can find a way to help everyone." Lyra nodded, swallowing her fear. Together they walked toward the village, careful. To stay out of sight, the leaders had sent a small group to escort Mark and Lyra to the hall. The guards watched closely, their faces cold and suspicious. Inside the hall, the walls were rough stone, and the air smelled of dust and old smoke. The leaders sat in a circle, their faces serious as Mark and Lyra entered. Thax spoke first. "Human, you have interfered with our laws by saving this girl. But we recognize your strength and your will. We offer you a deal." Mark listened carefully. "What kind of deal?" Zara smiled thinly. "We'll serve our village. We'll use your skills too. Protect us from our enemies. In return, we will allow the girl to live and provide you with what you need." Mark's eyes narrowed. "And if I refuse?" Thax's face hardened. "Then you will face our laws. We do not make threats lightly." Lyra looked at Mark, her heart pounding. She could see the weight of the decision on his face. Mark took a deep breath. "I agree to your deal for now. but I will help more than just your village. This planet needs water, life, and hope." The leaders exchanged uneasy glances. They had never met a human like Mark before. The meeting ended, and Mark and Lyra were led back to the ship. Outside, the village buzzed with rumors about the humans' arrival. As they walked, Lyra asked quietly, "Do you think they will keep their promise?" Mark shook his head. "Leaders often make deals to protect their power. We must be ready for anything." That night, Mark worked on his water machines, trying to produce clean water from the dry air. Lyra helped, her eyes shining with hope. But danger was growing. Some villagers whispered in the dark corners, plotting to stop the human and keep their old ways. The next day, while Mark tested his machines near the village center, a group of armed rebels approached him. They were tired of the harsh laws and wanted change. "We want to help," their leader said, "but the leaders will not allow it." Mark smiled. "Together, we can make a difference. But we must be careful." Suddenly, a loud explosion shook the ground. Mark turned to see smoke rising from the water reservoir. The guards rushed toward the fire. Mark and Lyra ran after them, their hearts racing. When they reached the reservoir, they saw the damage. The fire was small, but dangerous, and the water was at risk. "We will fix this," Mark said firmly. "But someone wants to stop us." Lyra looked around. She knew who was behind this, those afraid of change, who wanted to keep the village. In fear, Mark helped the villagers put out the fire and repair the damage. His machines began working again, producing fresh water. The village began to change slowly. People came to Mark with questions and hope in their eyes, but not everyone was happy. The leaders watched, their power slipping. That night, Lyra sat beside Mark. "I want to believe things will get better," she said softly. Mark looked at her with a gentle smile. "We will fight for that." Together, outside, the desert wind howled. The battle for the village's future had only just begun. The desert sun rose higher, its heat making the dry land shimmer like a mirage. Mark and Lyra sat beside a small campfire near the rocky hills outside the village. The cool morning breeze offered little relief from the harsh world they lived. And Lyra looked tired, but determined. "Mark," she said softly, "there is something you need to know. The water here is not just rare, it is a treasure. That treasure comes with a heavy price." Mark leaned forward, curious. "Tell me everything." Lyra took a deep breath and began her story. This planet was once full of rivers, lakes, and green forests. But years ago, a terrible drought came. The rivers dried up. The rain stopped falling. The land cracked and died. Many people left, but my family stayed. We tried to survive. Water became the most valuable thing on this planet. Mark nodded slowly. "I can see why." Lyra's eyes darkened. "The leaders keep most of the water for themselves, and the guards. The rest of us get only a little, barely enough to live. That's why I had to steal water. I could not watch my people die thirsty." Mark felt a wave of sadness. "That is cruel. No one should live like this." Lyra looked away, ashamed. "I know the leaders don't care about the poor. They keep the water and the power. Many people suffer quietly." Mark's jaw tightened. "We have to change that." Suddenly, the quiet night was broken by a low growl nearby. Both turned their heads sharply. Out of the shadows stepped a large creature, part wolf, part lizard, its eyes glowing red. It was one of the desert beasts that roamed freely, feared by all. Lyra gasped. "Stay still. It will sense fear." Mark froze, heart pounding. The beast circled them slowly, growling softly. But instead of attacking, it stopped and sniffed the air around Lyra. Then, surprisingly, it lowered its head and walked away into the darkness. Mark let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. That was close. Lyra smiled weakly. "That beast knows me. I saved it once. It is my protector." Mark looked at her with new respect. "You are stronger than I thought." The next morning, Mark visited the village elders again. This time, he asked questions about the water supply and the planet's history. Thax and Zara exchanged glances, but answered cautiously. They revealed little but hinted at old secrets, ancient wells buried deep underground, hidden from the people. Mark knew he had to find these wells. He could bring water from them, the village could survive. With Lyra and a few rebels, Mark set out on a dangerous journey to find the ancient wells. They traveled through rocky canyons and deep caves, following old maps and legends. The desert was unforgiving. Sandstorms whipped around them. The sun burned their skin. Hope drove them forward. Finally, after days of searching, they found a hidden entrance covered by rocks. Inside, the air was cool and damp, a sign of water. Mark used his devices. To scan the walls, deep underground, water flowed in hidden tunnels. "This is it," Mark whispered. "We can bring water back." But their discovery did not go unnoticed. Back in the village, the leaders learned of the expedition. Fearful of losing control, they sent guards to stop them. One night, as Mark and his group rested near the caves, armed guards surrounded them. A fierce fight broke out. Mark used his skill and technology to protect his friends. Lyra fought bravely beside him, her heart fierce with hope and anger. After the battle, the group escaped deeper into the caves. Though tired and hurt, they pressed on. Mark knew the water was the key to saving the village. But the leaders' power was strong and their opposition dangerous. The secret of the water wells was revealed, but the true test of courage and trust was still ahead. The desert wind howled fiercely as Mark and Lyra returned to the village, their faces covered with dust and sweat. The sun had just begun to set, casting long red shadows over the cracked earth. Behind them, the hidden wells promised hope, but in front of them lay a much bigger challenge. Mark knew that finding water was only the first step. The village needed more than just water. It needed safety, trust, and a new way of living. As they entered the village, whispers followed them. Some people watched with hope, while others stared with fear. The leader's power was still strong, and many were loyal to them. Mark gathered the rebels and a few villagers who dared to believe in change. "We can use the water from the wells," he said, "but we must build machines to bring it here and keep it safe. We must show everyone that life can be better." Lyra nodded. "But the leaders will not let us. They will try to stop us." Mark's eyes were sharp. "Then we must be ready." Over the next few days, Mark and the villagers worked hard. They built water pumps, pipes, and tanks. Mark used his knowledge and technology from Earth, teaching the villagers how to use the machines. Slowly, water began to flow through new channels. The dry land near the village started to show signs of life. Small plants grew. Children laughed as they played with the fresh water, but not everyone was happy. One night, as Mark checked the water pumps, he noticed something strange. A part of the machine had been damaged. "It was clear sabotage, Daddy," called Lyra and the rebels. "Someone does not want us to succeed. We must protect the machines." Lyra's face was serious. "Leaders will do anything to keep their power." Mark nodded. "We need guards and protection. I will train you to defend." Days later, the village's peace was shattered. A group of masked attackers destroyed one of the water tanks. The villagers were terrified. Some blamed Mark and the rebels for bringing danger. The leaders used the attack to spread fear and doubt. They told the people that the human was a troublemaker. Mark and Lyra stood before the crowd, trying to calm them. "We are here to help," Mark said. "Together, we can build a better future." But many voices shouted back, "The leaders know what is best. We do not want change." Lyra's heart ached. She looked at Mark. "How can we win their trust?" Mark thought hard. "By showing them results, we will fix the damage and bring water to everyone." With the rebels' help, Mark and Lyra worked day and night. They repaired the tanks, fixed the pipes, and made the machines stronger. Slowly, the villagers' fear turned to hope again. One day, the leader sent envoys to speak with Mark. "We want to talk," Zara said. Mark agreed. They met in the stone hall once more. Zara's voice was calm but firm. "You see your work, human, but the village needs order. We must have rules," Mark answered. "Rules are good, but they must be fair. Water's life. It must belong to all. The leaders hesitated. The village was changing, but their power was slipping. Outside, the desert wind carried whispers of rebellion and hope. Mark's plan was working, but the fight for the village's future was far from over. That night, Mark and Lyra stood on a hill, looking at the stars. "We have done much," Mark said, "but many challenges remain." Lyra smiled. "We will face them together." As the cold desert night wrapped around them, the promise of a new life glowed brighter, powered by water, courage, and unity. The desert sky was heavy with dark clouds, unusual for this dry world. A storm was coming, a storm not just of wind and sand, but of fear and fury. The village felt the change deep in its bones, like a warning from the earth itself. Mark stood at the edge of the village, watching the horizon. His eyes were sharp, filled with both determination and worry. The leaders had grown desperate. Their power was slipping fast, and they would not give up without a fight. Lyra stood beside him, her face strong despite the pain of the days before. She had fought alongside Mark through every challenge. Now, the biggest test was coming. From the village center, a loud horn sounded the call to arms. The leaders had gathered their loyal guards and were preparing to strike against Mark. The rebels and anyone who supported change. Mark turned to the villagers who had joined their cause. "This is the moment we have been preparing for.
Protect
the water, protect your homes, fight for your future." The crowd responded with fierce cries. Men, women, and even some children took up whatever weapons they could find: sticks, rocks, and old tools. The attackers came fast, the leaders. Guards, armed and well-trained, marched into the village with anger burning in their eyes. Their goal was clear: destroy the machines, capture Mark, and crush the rebellion. The battle began with shouts and the clash of weapons. Mark moved quickly, using his small energy weapon to defend and protect. He was careful not to hurt anyone. Too badly, this was not a war of hate, but of survival. Lyra fought beside him, fearless and fierce. She used her knowledge of the village paths to outsmart the attackers. Leading the rebels to strategic points, the air was thick with dust and noise. Voices screamed, machines hummed, and the earth trembled under heavy footsteps at one point. Mark found himself face to face with Thax, the elder leader. Thax's eyes burned with fury. "You will fail, human," he spat. "This village will never belong to you." Mark stood tall. "It already belongs to everyone, not just the few, who keep power by fear." They clashed, Mark's weapon flashing against Thax's heavy staff. Sparks flew as they fought, each refusing to give ground. Meanwhile, Lyra led a group to protect the main water tanks. Saboteurs tried to blow them up, but the rebels fought back fiercely. The battle lasted hours. Both sides suffered losses. Mark and Lyra's determination never wavered. At the height of the fight, a massive sandstorm suddenly swept through the village. The wind howled, blinding everyone with sand. In the chaos, Mark was separated from the others. He struggled to find his way, feeling the storm's power threatening to overwhelm him. Suddenly, shadow appeared. It was Lyra, breaking through the storm. She grabbed Mark's arm. "We can't give up now," she shouted over the wind. "Come with me." Together, they fought their way back to the heart of the village, where the rebels had pushed the attackers back. The storm passed as quickly as it had come, leaving silence and dust in its wake. When the sun rose the next morning, the village lay battered but alive. Mark looked around at the faces. Some were bruised. Some were grieving, but all were hopeful. Lyra smiled weakly. "We won." Mark nodded, but his eyes were sad. "We won, but at a cost." A young rebel approached them carrying news. One of their closest friends had been badly hurt during the battle and needed help. Mark immediately prepared to help, his mind already working on healing devices he had brought. The final battle had tested them all, but it had also shown the strength of hope and unity. The village would never be the same again. The sun rose softly over the desert village, bathing the cracked earth in warm light. The air was calm now, quiet after the storm of battle. The dust had settled, but the wounds remained, some fresh, some deep. Yet in this silence, there was a feeling of hope. Like the first breath of a new life, Mark stood beside Lyra, outside the small shelter where the wounded were cared for. His face was tired, but his eyes shone with determination and kindness. Lyra sat quietly on a simple cat, her arm wrapped in bandages. The injury she had barely escaped during the battle had left her weak. But her spirit was strong. "Thank you for saving me," Lyra said softly, looking at Mark. Mark smiled gently. "You saved yourself, Lyra. You fought bravely." Round them. The village was changing. The machines Mark had helped build were pumping fresh water into new tanks. Children played near small patches of green where flowers and grasses had begun to grow. The harsh desert was slowly turning into a place where life could thrive. Again, the leaders who had once ruled with fear were gone, replaced by a council made up of villagers, rebels, and even some former guards who had chosen peace at the village. Meeting that morning, voices were filled with excitement and new ideas. "We will share the water equally," said Jocks, the young boy who had helped Lyra. "No one will go thirsty again. We must build schools and teach our children." Another voice added, "Knowledge is the key to our future." Mark listened, proud and hopeful. He knew his mission here was almost complete. Something inside told him this was only the beginning. One evening, as the stars twinkled above the desert, Mark and Lyra sat by the fire. "Will you stay?" Lyra asked quietly, her eyes searching. His Mark looked up at the sky. "I came here to help, and I will stay as long as I am needed." Lyra smiled, her heart full. "You changed everything. It's not just the water, but how we live in hope." Mark reached out and took her hand gently. Together, we made a difference. The days turned into weeks. The village grew stronger. People worked side by side, planting gardens, fixing homes, and building a new future. Mark taught the villagers about Earth, about trees, rivers, and blue skies. He shared stories of kindness and courage from his world, inspiring them to dream bigger. Lyra became a leader in her own right, guiding her people with wisdom and compassion. But beyond the village, Mark knew other deserts waited, other villages that needed help. One morning, Mark prepared his ship. The villagers gathered to say goodbye, their faces filled with gratitude and sadness. "Where will you go?" Lyra asked. "To help others just like you," Mark replied. So, this planet is vast and no one should suffer alone." Lyra hugged him tightly. "You will always have a home here." Mark smiled. "And you will always have a friend in me." As the ship lifted into the sky, the village watched with tears and smiles. The desert was no longer just a place of death and despair. It was a land of life, hope, and new beginnings. Mark looked down at the village shrinking below and promised himself he would return. The story of the human and the alien girl who fought for water was now a legend, a reminder that courage and kindness can change even the harshest worlds.